Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack Megan. I'm director of the Office for the Arts and producer for the Arts First Festival. And on behalf of everybody at the Office for the Arts, thank you to the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies for hosting the great Rubén Blades with us tonight. We're thrilled to have Rubén here. Yeah, Rubén was to be awarded the Harvard Arts Medal in 2020, and then the pandemic came. So we called him and said, can we do 21? And he said, yes. And the pandemic stayed. And then we said 22, and he's been here and has been a generous guest all week, and we're thrilled to have him here today. Welcome again, Rubén, and thank you, David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Study Friends, for hosting this. This is part of a 4-day festival called Arts First. There's the brochure, and you will find them at the door when you go out. I encourage you to grab them because there are well over 100 performances in the next 4 days. It should be a wonderful time. That's all I want to say, because I want to turn it right over to Doris Sommer, who I've had a great opportunity to work with on other occasions. And Doris, thank you for taking it over from here, and I hope you all enjoy the conversation.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be here with you, with Rubén. Let's hear a real round of applause for Rubén. I felt the energy. We needed to express it. It's such a joy to be here. I'm going to spend a few minutes just reciting what some people know, what other people may not know, but just to celebrate with you who we have here in our company. I'll say these words, and I will ask the rest of us to be very brief when we engage Rubén. All right, and there'll be an opportunity to engage with him. When I suggested to him that we collect questions and he could organize and choose the ones that were interesting, he said, no, I don't want to choose. I want to be democratic and answer everybody. So you'll be invited to enter the conversation with your brief questions. But just to say about Rubén, that the Latin music icon, Rubén Blades, or Blades, because this is an international figure, as you know, was the center of New York Salsa revolution in the 1970s. His landmark albums in classic Afro-Cuban salsa are touched with rock, jazz, pan-Latin, and worldwide influences. Blades has collaborated with rock, jazz, hip-hop, reggaeton, and salsa artists, and has composed hundreds of songs and dozens of hits, known for their eloquent, socially charged lyrics, colorful characters, and memorable melodies. His 2017 album, Salsa Big Band, was awarded the Latin Grammy Album of the Year, and in 2021, the Latin Recording Academy named him Person of the Year and was awarded again the Latin Grammy Album of the Year and the Latin Grammy Best Salsa Album, just for starters. He is the subject of the 2018 award-winning documentary Yo No Me Llamo Rubén Blades, directed by Abner Benaim. He has won 10 Grammy and 10 Latin Grammy Awards, and this year he returns to star in the AMC television series Fear the Walking Dead. His role in the show has earned him a nomination for Best Supporting Actor Imagine Award. He's starred in Hands of Stone opposite Robert De Niro and in Safe House opposite Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds. Blades has played memorable roles in films with such acclaimed directors as Robert Redford in The Milagro Beanfield War, Robert Rodriguez in Once Upon a Time in Mexico, Spike Lee in Mo Better Blues, Alan Pakula in The Devil's Own, and Jack Nicholson in The Two Jakes. He was nominated for 3 Emmys for his roles in the television movies The Josephine Baker Story, Crazy from the Heart, and The Maldonado Miracle. His work has been honored with cable ACE, Independent Spirit, and ALMA Awards, and honored with the Raúl Juliá HOLA Founders Award and the Hispanic Heritage Foundation Arts Award. Beyond Blades' artistic success, he holds degrees in political science and law from the University of Panama and an LLM from the Harvard Graduate Law School. He ran for president of his native Panama in 1994 and served as Minister of Tourism from 2004 to 2009. The Loeb Music Library at Harvard University formed the Rubén Blades Archives in 2008 to collect his work and papers. So we have some future research to do here because he keeps producing. New York University Steinhardt appointed him scholar in residence for the 2018-19 academic year. In 2021, Blades, with Panama's Roberto Delgado Orchestra, released Sal Swing, offering up both salsa and jazz tracks as well as salsa plus, with the salsa tracks and swing, with the jazz tracks for genre purists. He and the Delgado Orchestra will return to touring in the US in November and December. Blades was born in a rooming house in a small Latin American country, but he refused to see limitations or barriers. His work has crossed geopolitical borders, cultures, and genres, and has made an impact throughout the world. He says he has more past than future, but he's not done yet, and we know that. So again, let's welcome Rubén.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
So this is, as you know, a conversation, un conversatorio, and I have the honor of asking a first question. Our student panelists will introduce themselves and ask a question, which we've decided has to be limited to 40 words or less. That's just advice for anyone else who wants to ask a question. I'll start. I'll introduce myself. Doris Sommer, as you know. I'm in the Department of Romance Languages and Literatures, proud to be the colleague of Luis Giron, who is here, who is another Caribbean star, and in medieval studies, and in the Department of African and African American Studies. So my interest and admiration for the Afro-Cuban music that Rubén promotes and composes has multiple points of entry. I want to, and I'm also the director of the Cultural Agents Initiative at Harvard, which is based both in Romance languages and in AAAS. So my question to you, Rubén, no, I don't know. With what level of formality to address you?
Rubén.
Muy bien, Rubén. My question to you is, what ways would you recommend for other artist activists to engage in public life, to wake up decision makers to the power of art, to improve personal and collective lives? You've managed to do that. How would you recommend that other artists and other political figures open up to the possibility of collaboration?
Oh, first of all, thank you for having me here. Thank you. I want to say hello to my friend Jose Maso, who's up there.
Hello, Jose.
Look, I would begin by saying that I don't think every artist has to do that. I chose to do that. What I think artists can do, because an artist is a citizen, and has duties as a citizen as well, is to try to utilize whatever influence they may have after educating themselves on the issues to provoke a reaction from the majority of the people that conform a society, so that we can make the changes that are needed to be made in the administration of that society more equitable and more successful. I can't ask every artist I wouldn't know how to ask an artist, this is what you have to do. I do have to say that I was always very careful not to fall into ideologies or cease to be objective about issues. I only talk about things that I know. I try to educate myself before making any kind of statement. And I felt that that was something that I needed to do. Once I discovered there was a contradiction of sorts at one point. When I began playing music, I was Pablo Pueblo. I had no money. I was a working person, and period, surviving. By singing songs like Pablo Pueblo and calling attention to social issues and whatnot, I began to become economically wealthy. And then I saw a contradiction arising there, in that I was making money, but I wasn't really resolving the issues. So I think that you can sing about something and call attention upon something. I'm talking about my case. But I realized that I had to do something more, because the issues are not going to be resolved through songs. You're not going to fix Haiti with a telethon or a couple of songs. You know, you have to, the political work, you do it either through weapons or through the political system. And I chose the political system. And I thought I need to eliminate this contradiction by becoming then active politically, which is what I chose to do. And creating a political party in 1990, helping to create a political party. I didn't do it by myself. No one does anything by themselves. And then having to run for president, which I did not want to do at the time, because I didn't think that was the right time for that. But I had to, because in order for the political party to survive, it needed votes. It needed to participate in the event, electoral event. And I was practically forced to do that because I couldn't delegate the trust or the interest that people had on another candidate that could have been more better prepared than myself for the job. So that's why I ended up running for president. But the notion was what made me become active again was the fact that I realized that although it was correct to address issues through art, social issues, the real solution was going to come out of political work. And for that, I had to go to the trenches. I couldn't do that from a record studio. As far as other people, other artists, I would encourage them to become educated and utilize the power that they have, the publicity that they have, to call attention upon issues that are of interest for the community. And one of the reasons that I could run for president in Panama is that a lot of people were curious about me, and they knew me from music. So I didn't have to spend a lot of money in publicity or the type of organization that is needed to make people come. They would come to see, well, I heard him sing when he wants to run for president. Let's see what he has to say. So that was a positive, and it helped me tremendously. And to this day, it does. But you have to be prepared. You have to prepare yourself. I mean, it's not as if enough to have the will. You have to be prepared. You can't just run out there and because you sing or act and then all of a sudden expect people are going to entrust their lives to you. That would be pretty foolish.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's start a round of our panelists' questions. Dinah, why don't you start, and then Gerardo, and then we'll go to the other side.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dinah Orozco-Herrera. I am from the Colombian Caribbean region next to Panama. I'm from Barranquilla. I'm in the second year in the Department of African and African American Study. I am doing my PhD. So this is the first time I come here to the United States, the last year. I'm also poet and activist. And I have a very little short question for you. I'm curious about how does your music open path for the production of new cultural aesthetic paradigms in Latin America based on the recognition of the social function of art and its relationship with social and racial justice?
Well, I think basically it came as a result of, first of all, the lyrics that we were writing were presenting realities that at the time had not been addressed in terms of popular music. In this country, the earlier example, I remember when Marvin Gaye did the song What's Going On, and there was a tremendous reaction in terms of, oh my God, there's a political statement having been made in pop music. And in Latin America, I was not the inventor of that. There were many people who were doing that from way before me. Violeta Parra, Facundo Cabral, it's a tremendous amount of people. Victor Jara, God bless him. So there's a history of political comment in terms of music with tremendous prices paid. Yeah. I mean, Victor was killed. It's not that they're not going to buy your record, it's that they're going to put you in a plane and throw you in the ocean. So I didn't invent that. I just felt that it was a way to express realities that needed to be expressed and were not being expressed, or were being expressed in the context of corrupt political structures. And I needed to reach to that group of people who are unfortunately not participant in the elections. In Panama, we have between 20 and 30% of people who never vote. That's a substantial amount of people. Talking about 600,000 people. And so it wasn't like I've sat down and I said, I'm going to make a very conscious effort to address issues that have, no, it was, I'm going to write about things that I think need to be addressed. And they can be addressed. The vehicle I found to have them to be addressed was salsa music, which was not necessarily the best example. Because for one thing, when the club owners didn't want to hire us, not only because they thought that was like communist or close to subversive, weird stuff, but also because most people didn't dance. And the club owners wanted people to dance, so they would get sweaty and they would buy drinks. And no one was sweating. No one was buying drinks. Everybody was just standing in front of the stage watching us. So the idea of creating this, and I wasn't alone, by the way. Willie Colon also helped me, and we have to mention Willie Colon as well. And again, there were other people. Eddie Palmieri had written Justicia before me, and Tita Cureta Alonso from Puerto Rico had written Pueblo Latino. So again, there were some voices that were being presented through the popular music genre, addressing issues that were not being expressed by the organisms that one would suppose would be the ones exposing them. So there was a tremendous impact. And it's a very interesting question. I find that it's interesting that it hasn't been studied, the fact that when my first album came in 1970, I had a song called Juan Gonzalez about a guerrilla who was killed by the army. In 1970, I think we probably had about 15 military dictatorships in Latin America. I think the ones that we had, Canada, United States, and Mexico didn't have them. Chile did not have one. I think Uruguay didn't have one. And I'm not sure which was the other country. But there were many army dictatorships, military dictatorships at the time. So the album was not a success or anything. But the point of the record, again, was to address an issue that I felt needed to be addressed. There is a price to pay for that. You know, they don't play on the radio, or they put you the tag, you know, they tag you as a subversive or communist or whatever. But again, it was something that I felt at the time it was needed. And I again stress the fact that other people were doing the same in other areas of Latin America. So without having the whole process of that deliberation of this is what I want to do, the reaction of the people was what made it possible for me to continue working, because people embraced the songs. If they hadn't, then it would have just fizzled out. Yeah. But people were ready to listen to songs that reflected their reality, that made them feel less lonely, that allowed them to articulate feelings that they had and they probably didn't know how to express. And much to the surprise of the record labels, who they wanted the money, basically. So they didn't really care about what I was doing, as long as it made them wealthy. But that was the direction we took. I mean, it's like, let's write about stuff that nobody else writes, and things that are important and that we think are important. And that's what we did.
Thank you so much, Anache.
Hi everyone, my name is Gilberto Lopez-Jimenez. I'm a student at the Harvard College, intend to concentrate in economics, and I'm here on behalf of Fuerza Latina. Harvard College is a Pan-Latinx organization. And my question for you, from me and the behalf of the board, would be, what were the biggest factors that shaped your identity and your ambitions when growing up?
Factors of what?
That shaped your identity and ambitions?
I think the biggest factor was my grandmother, I have to say. She was, I had the luxury of having a grandmother that was an exceptional woman. Just to give you an idea, she was born in 1885. She married twice and divorced twice. The first divorce was in 1919. Women were not supposed to divorce. And she didn't want to have anything to do with the two men she married, so she did not accept alimony. And she went to work. She had graduated from La Normal de Santiago, which was at the time the highest education center in Panama before the university. And she had 4 children, 2 women, 2 men. She didn't have money to send all 4 to school, so she sent the women. She taught the men at home. She taught me how to read and write when I was 5 years old. And she was a woman that never, she knew I was a child, but she treated me intelligently, always. She always responded to my questions. She encouraged them. And she was the one who gave me, like, the basic foundations for what I am in many ways. My father and my mother also contributed, but my grandmother was with me most of the time. And I'll give you a story. I mean, one day we were walking. We lived in a very small place, and it was very hot during the summer days. And near Calle 13 Oeste in Santa Ana, Panama, and nearby there was several theaters. There were many movie theaters around. But there was one called the Edison that had the coldest air conditioning unit in the Western Hemisphere. And it had a little store where there was a guy who sold hot dogs, 10 cents, that were the best hot dogs on earth. And we used to go there whenever we could, pay a dime, and you saw 2 movies and reels and comics, cartoons and whatnot. And we're going there one afternoon, and I noticed she had me grab by the hand, and she stopped. And I looked at her and said, ¿Por qué pasó? Abuela, where did we stop? And she says, un cortejo fúnebre, a funeral procession. Never heard those words. Cortejo fúnebre. What is that? I was like 5 years. She says they're going to the cemetery. Another word, cemetery. What is that? That's where people go and get buried. Oh, people get buried? How do they breathe? No, they're dead. Another concept, dead. Okay, so you know where this is going. It dawned on me after she explained the process, but in her words, people didn't just die, they went to a different plane. Okay? And I said, and then it dawned on me, I said, are you gonna die too one day? Which was horrible news. And she looked at me and she said, yes, I will. Pause. And so will you. So that was my grandma. It was like, boing. Once I asked her, I said, are we poor? And she said, why you ask me that? And I said, because sometimes I see that people have things that we don't have. And I know sometimes we can buy things. And she said, no, we're not poor. It's just that we don't have money. Okay, what's the difference? It's just, well, you're poor when you have nothing in your brain. You're poor when you have nothing in your spirit. Any idiot can win the lottery and become rich, and they're still poor. You know, and I thought, okay, you know, that kind of thing, that kind of lesson, that's one of the things that propelled me to be what I am today. I mean, she was with me all the time, and it was wonderful. I had her growing up. Remember that I asked God, don't let her die. When I was a kid, I said, don't let her die. I had heard that you became an adult when you were 21. So I said, okay, wait till I'm 21. Don't take her before that, because I won't be able to take it. And she died when I was 21. I don't think she planned that. And it still hurt the same, you know. But anyway, that was my grandmother. So I would say my grandmother was the one. And that sort of led me into studying, reading. The reading part was essential in my life. I mean, the fact that I was reading at 5. And she did it without telling anyone in the family. I mean, my father found out because one day he was reading the paper and I was just standing in front of him. And he looked and said, what do you want? And I said, I'm waiting for you to finish. And he looked at me and said, do you know how to read? And I said, yes. And he, you do? Here, read. And I read. And he, who taught you? I said, your mother. Oh my God. So that was my grandmother.
Thank you.
Wow.
We'll go to new questions, but I can already see a connection with you and Jose Maso, because he talks about.
Well, Jose is a friend from many, many years.
And his stories about grandmother resonate with this.
Hi, my name's Ines. I am a sophomore in the college studying social studies. And I'm representing HACIA, which is the Harvard Association Cultivating Inter-American Democracy. It's basically just a simulation of the Organization of American States. So it's more of a political question, but I was just curious, or we were curious about what it was like growing up in Panama at a time of like growing U.S. influence in the country.
Well, we had a colony in Panama. I mean, to this day, you have people that would argue it wasn't, and it was. It was a colony. And one of the things that people don't understand about the fact that the desire that Panamanians had to incorporate back that territory was that Panama's jurisdiction ended in the Canal Zone. Imagine New York, if you may, or Boston, or Cambridge, but I don't know the geography in Cambridge as well. Imagine New York. You have a Russian enclave, yeah, between East End, 57th Street, all the way to West End, that goes all the way to 14th Street. So, in order to get from 57th Street to 14th Street, you have to go through the Russian enclave. They're going to stop you. They're going to ask you for ID. And if you do anything that in any way, shape, or form affects or conflicts with the laws of Russia, you get judged by a Russian tribunal in Russian in your country. And if Russia has the death penalty, which we don't have in Panama, they will hang you and it will be fine. So the struggle for it wasn't just to get the canal back. It was, most people think, oh, it's all about the canal. No, it was about jurisdiction. Because that's what creates a country. We were not sovereign in Panama at the time. We were not. You had a foreign law being applied in your land, and you did not have the right to cross it, except through the intervention of a third country. So, and I will say something else also, that it's a point that has not been very much explored, in my opinion. I may be wrong. You know, they say that Obama was the first black president in America. No. The first black president in America was a Panamanian, Carlos A. Mendoza. Did you know that? The guy who, I forget their names, but the first one died, the president, then the first vice president died, and Mendoza, who was from the Arrabal de Santana, and a progressive, and he was a black man, became president. If you see the pictures of Panama of Mendoza, I think they ran out of talco. You know what talco is? I don't know how you say that in English. Talc.
Powder.
Huh? Talcum powder. To make them white. You see the pictures? You go like, that doesn't look like him. Okay? So to this day, we don't talk about that in Panama. In the Canal Zone, originally you had the gold roll and the silver roll, and it was supposed to mean, specialized work, labor, but it also had a racial connotation. And in the zone, you had racial divisions in the Canal Zone. So I remember, every white person in the Caribbean to me is suspicious in terms of the whiteness. It's like, I don't know, it's like lana tropicalizada. I hear that, a tropicalized wool. So we have like these tropical sheep, I guess, and then they make suits out of this tropical wool, which is absurd. Lana tropicalizada. And in the Canal Zone, you had the racial divisions, but not necessarily overt, but the Southern mentality, the Jim Crow mentality was there as well. So there were people who thought that, like myself, if you're a little white, I'm like them. No, you're not. The moment you open your mouth, you're not from there. So we had to go through that, but we didn't realize what was going on at the time. And let me tell you something else. We idolized the United States. I never, growing up until the 9 de enero in 1964, which was a riot we had defending our flag. We had 500 dead and 21 wounded people. And many of the dead were children and women civilians, people who not students or whatever. Up till that moment, we were all pro-U.S. totally. Totally. We loved the music. We loved the movies. We applauded when we saw the movies. We applauded when the cavalry came and killed all the Indians. We never asked, is that right? We never asked why I don't see any black people in this movie. We didn't ask any of that. We were just U.S. And then that happened. And then without us turning communists, we turned our eyes inside and said, let's start looking at ourselves and, what is going on here, really? Which was my personal journey when I was 15 years old, because I couldn't understand what happened. And so growing up in those days, it was love, and then it became a study on what was really going on, what was the core of the relationship that we had. And it continued to this day, but it didn't turn the country into like communist or anything. It just made us conscious of that, the fact that we were Panamanians and that we had to understand who we were and respect what we were as well.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Martin Reyes. I'm from Cali, Colombia. I'm a third year studying applied math at the college, and I'm representing HOLA, Harvard Organization for Latin America. And our question was, you talk about how you raised awareness through your music, but you say that raising awareness maybe not enough to make an impact in society. How did you manage to make that transition to actually make an impact?
Well, it depends on people. It depends on the people. I'm an optimist in that sense, because I worked in government. When I chose to work in government, I worked in government because the first thing I thought was, I'm going to work for my country. I'm going to take a position from someone that can steal, and I'm going to work, and I know I'm going to do my job. Okay. A lot of people do not, and I hear this in Panama a lot. Why don't you get involved in politics? Coño, la política es una mierda, mano. I hear that all the time. Politics is shit. I said, it is shit because you let shit occupy the post. So how do you think it's going to be resolved? By magic? You're going to call Harry Potter and he's going to fix it? You got to take the place yourself. But most people don't want to get involved. So, answering your question, I'm an optimist. I think we can change things. I worked in government in 5 years. 5 years, I didn't do movies. I didn't do film. I didn't do TV. I didn't do shows. I didn't do records. I worked. My credit went to hell. I lost my agent. I mean, when I left there, on top of everything, I didn't even know I was a PPE, politically exposed person. I said, what is that? It's like, okay, so now we're going to be watching you for the next 5 years to see, where the money comes from. I got audited by the IRS twice. They're going like, where are you putting the money? Speak. It's like, I'm working for the government. I'm making $82,000 a year. Having said that, find people who do that. Go find people to say, okay, quit yourself, quit your interest, and go there and work. And why did I do that? Because instead of bitching about it and complaining and writing letters, and I look at myself in the mirror and I said, you know what? I did this. I did my 5 years. If everybody did that, why do we have the problems we have in Panama? We have un estado clientelista. People, listen to this. Brazil has 244 million people. About 1 or 2. When Lula ran for president, Lula's party had 1 million people in the party. In Panama, the electoral roll might be like 2,700,000 around. We have 1,600,000, 1,700,000 enrolled in political parties. Because of ideology? No. It's like, okay, if I go with these guys, maybe they'll win and they'll give me a job. Does that make sense? No. But it makes sense for a lot of people. So there's nothing I can do to force them, but I can present, and we should present, reasons why it's best not to be following that pattern, that line anymore, and work to try to change in a positive way the country, which we can do. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Right now, according to polls for 2024, the number one possible election is a guy whose two sons are in jail right now because of they accepted already the fact that they received bribes from Odebrecht for a third party that's going to be discovered in July. Who's the third party? Well, someone that is very close relative of them, who was in power between 2014 and 2019, and who, and I'm going, who could that be? Can you explain that to me rationally? No. So it's up to us, really. It's up to us. I mean, we have no excuse. And I just hope that I can objectively explain, or propose rather, ways to fix things, which we can. I was in government 5 years, and I tell you, I did not leave disappointed in the sense of, oh my God, I realized we can't change many things through responsible political action from an administration. We can. And another thing, not everybody in the administration is a thief. They're very good people there to work, but you have to work within what you have. What are you going to do? This is the system. These are the parties, so you got to work. I mean, I'm working with a party where I know people in PRD, some of them should be, in jail. But the thing is, you're going to have to work with what you have and do your job and set an example. And PRD is not the only one. I mean, there's no political party in Panama that I would put my hand on at all. They all have the same problems of clientelismo. But I think that is something that we can fix. I do. I'm very, very optimistic about that.
Good. So thinking about optimism and talking to the new generation of potential participants in a better political life and social life. The floor is now open to your questions.
Mm-hmm.
How should we manage this with? No, I think Rubén.
No.
No way.
I think we can go from here to there.
There. Okay, go ahead.
But can you talk from there? Go ahead. We can hear you.
So it's been a privilege to hear you talking about all these very important issues. So I'm here with my friends who are all LLMs from Harvard Law School. We are colleagues with you. So of course, the obvious question for us to make to you is, first, why did you choose the law? And the second is, what influence the law had in your career?
In my career?
Yeah, in your music.
The reason that I think again, I went in law because of my grandmother. Again, she was an activist. Mm-hmm. She fought for the women's rights. The vote. She was very good friends with a woman, a Panamanian activist called Clara González de Beringer. In those days, arrested. All kinds of things with my grandmother. So the notion of fighting for an ideal was something that I was very, very attracted to. And the other thing that helped me sort of make up my mind is that I read a book by a lawyer, Samuel Leibowitz, a Jewish lawyer from New York. And I read that book, and that book had an impact on me because Samuel Leibowitz was one of the defenders of the Scottsboro Boys, which was a group of 9 blacks who were wrongly accused of raping a white woman, I believe, in Alabama, one of those southern states. And Leibowitz went all the way from New York to the South to defend these kids. And that story had a big impact on me. And I thought, again, you're fighting for the good. It was a good cause. And it really made me want to be with the good guys. I want to be one of the good guys. And so that those two, my grandmother and that. And I'd also have to say, in Panama, growing up, my mother never finished school. My father didn't finish school. They were working all the time. They were working since they were very young. But in my neighborhood, the fact that we were all going to go to school was a given. You know, everybody was going to school, period. And the university was free in Panama, free. So, what were people studying? Engineering, architecture, medicine, or law? Okay, let's go the first two. I flunked 3 subjects in high school that I had to do again. 3 subjects. Math. So that takes care of engineering and architecture. The other 2 subjects you would be very surprised to know that I flunked were music and artistic education. So what am I doing here? I have no clue. How did I get here? I have no idea. So the other 2 were medicine and law. Medicine, I can't stand blood. So, law. I mean, that was one. But I was motivated, like I said, because I felt law was the civilized way and the right way, the democratic way, and the community way to resolve issues and make things clear and administratively successful. So I figured, that's an interesting choice for me to make. As far as the effect it had in my career, I mean, it provided me with a discipline. I mean, as a writer, it helped me to see both sides of the issue. I always try to see both sides. I don't just go with one. I educate myself. I want to know why you believe what you believe, and I want to understand how I would feel if I were you and what I would do. And once I understand that, then I can articulate a position that is closer to truth or to an understanding and a solution, as opposed to me looking at it from this perspective and saying you're wrong and I'm right. So that helped me in that way. As a writer, I try to be objective all the time. And in terms of business, it didn't help me much because in those days you had to sign a contract if you wanted to record, and the contracts were awful. And it was like when you buy a plane ticket, they have the contract is in the back. Have you ever read it? Of course not. You just get in the plane. And you're going to start, excuse me, in a clause number 5, it says, what's that, get out, please, your other people want to come in. So you just buy your ticket and go in. So that's what happened to me as far as the contract. But I knew enough to negotiate my contracts later on and to help others as well. And I try to organize a union in New York amongst musicians. We got the place where we went was burned down. And, but that's another story. So it helped me tremendously in the discipline. The fact that I went through the 6 years in Panama, 5 years in Panama. I took an extra year because I was working with people in jail. And I was traveling there was an island called Coiba, which was one of the last penal colonies in America. Actually, Coiba is the biggest island in the Pacific. It took me a while to finish my thesis on repeat criminals. But it helped me tremendously as a person and in the business as well, because I was, again, objective. I was disciplined, and I learned how to measure myself in terms of relationships with not just the business, but with people as well. And as a writer, it helped me to be objective. There was a gentleman. Who raised it before you? You did, before him.
Hi, I'm Mauricio. I'm MPID at Harvard Kennedy School. I'm from El Salvador, and a little bit of context. About I have two questions. A little bit of context. In 2019, we elected a new president that defeated the two biggest parties that governed the country for like 30 years. In 2021, he won the Congress by a landslide. And the first action that he took was kicking out the Supreme Court judges and replacing them with his people, basically. You supported his actions, and I was wondering, I can't deny that raises like an interesting question, like how can we reconcile the paradox of like an elected body in this case, like the parliament, taking like actions that undermine the democracy. So that I think that's like an interesting paradox to resolve. And my second question is, after his recent actions like reinterpreting the Constitution, and now he can become reelected, do you think he's still following the right path?
Look, there are several aspects on the question. The first thing is, in Panama, for instance, we have a situation with the judiciary and the legislative bodies. They both need reform, desperately. They're both considered corrupt. And there are many examples that would seem to support that notion. But what is the problem? How do you solve it how do you make the omelette without breaking the egg?
No.
And some people say, and I suggested at one point, as a last resort, if you present all the changes that need to be made in order to curtail corruption, you're never going to end corruption. That comes from Adam and Eve all the way down. I mean, come on. But at least you can hold it or stop it or control it to a degree. If you want to do that, then my suggestion was check what do we need to change in the codes that exist that allow corruption to flourish. What laws do we need to create to prevent it outright as well? And once you have that, you present it to the country as a candidate. The country then decides whether or not what you're presenting them makes sense. Let us assume they elect you. Once you get to the presidency, those arguments, now you return them as a national referendum to the people. If the people vote yes, then you bring that, you create you already have the los proyectos de ley in position, all the laws, and then you bring them to the National Assembly. If the National Assembly sees those projects and realizes that that is going to suspend their control, their corrupt control, and they say, no, we're not going to look at that, then you close it. And then if I were president, I would shut it down. After that process, not like, I'm going to shut it down right immediately. No. I would argue that the poder del pueblo, the people's will was, I want you to do this, and now I can't do it because the assembly doesn't allow me to do it. So what should I do? That would be my reaction. Of course, somebody would say, you're violating the institutionality of the law. You're violating the law. You're becoming a dictator. And I pose to you the question, how do you change it? What do you do when the people that are supposed to be doing the right thing are the problem? What do you do with a police officer that instead of protecting you, extorts you? When you bring him to the law gives him oh no, he's right and you're wrong. What do you do? That question, going back now to Salvador, Bukele didn't have the problem with the assembly because he won the assembly, correct? In Salvador? but he won the assembly. Okay, so the people voted for that. Now, what is going to happen? What would the cost be of fixing a place that is broken with all the institutions, or most of the institutions, controlled by a group that doesn't want to let go of power? Is going to be determined not by what I say, but what the people in Salvador feel. And again, I go back to what I said before. These things happen because we allowed them to happen or not. Another point that I would like to make about democracy is by nature impossible to predict. When the Pontius Pilate scenario, I always bring that up. It was a vote, show of hands that got Christ in the cross. They preferred Barabbas. So there is going to be scenarios, and that's a big problem with democracy today. It's like, in order for democracy to function, people have to be responsible. We have to be responsible. If we're not responsible, if we don't do our job, democracy, people buy the vote and then that's it. Well, the other one gets up and does whatever they want. We are the problem. And in Panama, you continue to see the same people getting elected and getting re-elected. And who put them there? The United States didn't put them there. Fidel Castro didn't put them there. Or somebody in a flying saucer. We did. So your question is a very hard question for me to tell you as a Salvadorian, this is what you should do. But I'm telling you what I would do. I would present the position to the people in Panama. And if the people of Panama say, do this, we want those laws, and the assembly says, no, we're not going to do them, then I would close it. That's what I would do. And of course, I would be called a dictator. And as a matter of fact, I already said this in Panama. And right away I had, look at him, what he's saying. But no one responds to my question. What do you do when two of the three organisms, the judiciary and the legislative, are the problem? What do you do? No one says anything. To this day, I'm still waiting because I would like to know if there's another way. I don't know. My way was present the laws that need to be changed, have the people accept, say yes, okay, you can go. We're going to elect you. You go there, and then you present them back. People vote on those projects, and then you bring them back to the assembly now from the executive. And see what the assembly does. And if the assembly says, we don't care what the people of the country want, then tell me if a president doesn't have the right to defend the will of the people in front of 72 people who feel that they're the kings of the country. That's the problem. It's a conundrum. And there's no easy way out. No easy way out. I hope Bukele doesn't turn into Ortega. But we'll see. We'll see. Espérate, we're going this way. Oh, from up, down then. And then point.
Okay, pero ya son...
It's okay. It's never going to be 2 minutes.
Hi, Rubén. Thank you.
No,
Hi, Rubén. Thank you for that amazing lecture. I come from one of the colonies of the United States, Puerto Rico, and my question is about sovereignty. In 1901, the Congress of the United States created the unique designation of unincorporated territory to label the legal constitution of Puerto Rico as a place that has limited control to govern themselves. This legal framework creates beneficiary gaps for the occupying power, and that designation hasn't changed till this day. And so I wanted to ask you, what are the things that we could learn from the 1964 Panama uprisings in terms of achieving land sovereignty? Or perhaps what would be a step toward the right direction in achieving land sovereignty.
I had to correct that the Panama, it wasn't an uprising as much as it was a reaction against Kennedy. Before Kennedy died, President Kennedy ordered both flags, the Panamanian flag and the North American flag, to be risen at the same, in all public buildings throughout the Canal Zone. He died about a month, he was killed about a month later. And so it was never really enacted. And then when the order arrived to the Canal Zone, my memory of that is that the Fleming, who was the governor at the time, said that there weren't enough flagpoles to raise both flags at the same time. So he decided to take the US flag down. So there would be no flags, which of course infuriated the North Americans who wanted to see their flag. Sure. So they went and they raised the flag. And a group of Panamanian students from the Instituto Nacional took the flag from the school and went over there to raise it also. And that's when the incident occurred. The unprovoked, really, attack, and the way that the attack was made, 21 dead, including women and children, was what infuriated everybody, or most people in Panama, to the point that the president at the time, Chiari, broke relationships with the United States, which was practically unimaginable. He did that. So the situation with Puerto Rico is a little different. What I think, basically, again, what would you do when, and this is another of those thorny questions, if you have a national referendum or plebiscite based on whether you want to be a state or not, what are you going to do if the majority votes for a state? What are you going to do? It's like, again, if the majority of people decide that, it's a democracy. It's okay, so the majority felt that way. Personally, I think it would be very difficult for the Senate of the United States to say, okay, we're going to take Puerto Rico as a state, and we're not going to make English the national, the obligatory language, and we're going to take away all the benefits of, we're not going to pay taxes, all that stuff is going to change. I don't see that really happening. But what I would recommend to Puerto Rico is to, first of all, what would Puerto Rico do? How would it survive if it were free of that presence? Because it's not enough to want to be free. You have to sustain it. How am I going to sustain this? Okay? So all the political parties in Puerto Rico, including Los Independentistas, I would start thinking, what do we need to do to administer our country? Where are we going to find the money to do this? Of course, laws should be changed that do not allow Puerto Rico, on the other hand, to develop their possibilities. And that nonsense that the tariff that has to be paid
Jones
in order
Act.
to have boats come
The Jones Act. The Jones Act.
Yeah, the Jones Act, that's absurd. Just to mention one thing. So, but right now, what I would recommend is like the same in Panama, is like, what are our strengths? In Panama, when I was a candidate, we ran what we call inventarios provinciales. The idea was to find out which were the strengths of each of the components of the country, to try to then integrate them to a national development plan, so that we wouldn't repeat efforts, and to understand also what infrastructure investments we needed to make in order to habilitate those areas to be productive. The people that we needed to train, in what directions, what markets were going to be satisfied, how are we going to sustain this? So that's what I would recommend Puerto Rico, because right now, and especially after the calamity of Maria, a lot of land was lost that could have been productive. Puerto Rico has to produce its own food. I would recommend that. to be able to sustain itself, because food is a strategic element for a country. I mean, food is very, very important, and water too. Although right now at this point, many people don't think of that. So I would start thinking, okay, what can we do to make Puerto Rico solvent again? How are we going to make the country produce? What do we need to produce? You got tourism. Okay, what else do we have? What line of work do we need to encourage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to be prepared for the moment. I think eventually the issue is going to come. And again, I love Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Rico. I'll always be of service of Puerto Rico because they've always been with me. You don't really, the island didn't need to support me. You have enough musicians there, very good and better than me. But I appreciate the fact that they have. So I would always be there with them. But I do think that it's an opportunity to start thinking, what would we do if we were free? This is what we would do before expecting it to happen. You have to know how you're going to support yourselves.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. This guy, the guy. You. Yeah.
Rubén, it's such an honor. I'm Jose Ignacio Hernandez, fellow Harvard Kennedy School. More importantly, I'm a Venezuelan. So I want to ask you your question about the instrumental use of salsa to boost authoritarian populist policies that happen with Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro.
Are they using salsa for that purpose at this point?
Yeah, well, not recently, but he used to.
Well, again, it's interesting because when people ask me about music, I don't believe in censorship. I really don't. I think it's dangerous. Where do you stop? So when I don't want to hear something, I just don't listen to it. I don't want to kill the singer. I just don't listen to it. So if you have music, and I don't know how good that salsa may be, I have no. Because I mean, and I would think that the ones playing it are not communists. Because one thing about communism is that they were the grayest people in the university. I mean, they didn't know how to tell a joke.
I know. They couldn't dance.
They couldn't dance. They couldn't play a drum. I mean, it's like they were very boring people. So, which is probably one of the reasons why I've never been a communist country in Panama. I don't think they'll ever win. But but I say I didn't know that was happening. But again, if I don't know what effect that may have. But of course, that every totalitarian state, is going to try to do whatever they can to bring about their permanence in power. So, but I wouldn't know what to tell you. I'm sorry, I didn't know they were doing that. I would like to hear one of the songs and see what the deal is. Yeah. No, I'm going with you later. Go ahead.
An incredible privilege. I wanted to push back against your idea that you wouldn't change things to the east.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Venezuela in the 70s and 80s and listening to songs. You mentioned Pablo Pueblo, Pablo C., Maestra Vida, hearing phrases like, Andrés se murió a su lado sin conocer a Perea. I mean, that just shaped the way, later studying economics, I learned about, technical aspects of social justice and equality, how to measure it, poverty, and so forth. And you learn how to think about it. But I think your songs and that time, me growing up, taught me how to feel about it. And
well, I'm glad.
It changed me a lot, and it changed others a lot. So I think you're underestimating the power you have.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, him. And then you.
So my name is Felipe. I'm a first year at the college from San Juan, Puerto Rico. So you say that you love
Thank you. Muchas gracias, papá.
I grew up a really big fan of your work in the Cape Man.
Oh, thank you.
And, I was disappointed to hear a lot of criticism surrounding it, particularly because of subject matter, so glorifying Cuba. And I was curious, do you think that it was really counterproductive to this mission of ours of, disrupting the negative stigmatization of
No.
culture in American pop culture? Do you think it was really essential to sort of doing that same thing?
I thought it was important, and I'll tell you, there's an issue there that always bothered me. First of all, The Cape Man by Paul Simon was a musical about redemption. It was not the glorification of a killer. And for those of you who don't understand the background, Salvador Agron in 1959 he was 14 years old. He killed 2 teenagers. It was, I remember reading about it in Panama. That's how shocking it was, that a teenager would kill 2 other children. It was a big scandal in the United States. And one of the things that made it even more scandalous is that Agron was very matter-of-fact about it. He didn't show any kind of repentance. He just said, it was them or me. He had made a mistake. He had made a mistake thinking that those kids were from a gang. They weren't. But the whole issue of the Cape Man was Agron coming out of jail and how he dealt with the issue of what he had done. He became a spokesperson for kids in trouble. And the whole, you can help me with this thing. I'm pretty useless. Harvard degree and all. Thank you. And so he was, the purpose of the show was to show the possibility of redemption. The hypocritical part of the whole thing is that while we had people outside protesting on Broadway, this play glorifies criminals, Stephen Sondheim, God bless him, had a musical of his called Assassins, where he was presenting the lives of a series of killers. And I don't remember anyone protesting the show saying that Sondheim was glorifying John Wilkes Booth and Harvey Oswald. And there was another musical called Ragtime, and the protagonist was exploding cars, which to me was, that's urban terrorism. And no one said a word. Why did they point out that specific musical? I think there was a bit of like, we don't want this here. That's what I think, because it doesn't make any sense to me. One of the reasons why I oppose, I do not support any tyrannical regime. And Cuba, I do not support the Marxist-Leninist regime in Cuba. But I'm against the blockade. Why? Because if the argument for the blockade is that in Cuba you have no freedom of speech, you have no freedom of press, you have no free elections, why the hell do you do business with China? And until somebody can explain that to me without destroying the ideal, then I will oppose it. So the fact that there were people marching against Cape Man, but not a word about these other 2 things, made me consider that there was a bit of that. We don't want this here. And Paul did not deserve the way he was treated at all. He did it with respect. He consulted with the families. It wasn't like something that he just did because he was a pop star. And I think he did a great job. We had problems, yes, directorial problems. There were things that could have been done better. But I all in all thought that was a great musical. And he should have won at least the music Tony. The Tony for the music score, and he didn't. And I was sorry about that. Mm-hmm.
And then your 1978 song, you say La Vida de Sorpresa. What sorpresa led you to add that?
The recording.
Oh, okay. What sorpresa led you to add that statement, and how has that sorpresa affected you?
Well, I mean, my life has been a continuous surprise in many ways. I thought I was going to die very young. When my grandmother gave me the news, in those days, I mean, if any kind of disease, let's say this, if COVID had arrived in Panama in 1953, it would have asked where I lived. Because every single thing that happened, I got it first. In the neighborhood. I got it first. Alfombrilla, I got it first. Varicela, I got it first. Sarampion, I got it first. I always got it first. So I was always in bed with a thermometer in my mouth and pneumoticine all over the place, with sweating like a pig for the fever, It's like, my God, this kid. Okay, so, big surprise is that I'm 74. Now, I'm stunned. You don't know. I'm stunned. The second thing is, I wasn't going to be a musician. I was not going to be a musician. I was going to be a lawyer. And my father at the time, and this is something that I'm writing a book and I'm making some things clear because the narrative is wrong. Some people say that I simply studied law, and then when I graduated, I went to my mother and said, Mom, here's the diploma. Now I'm going to do what my heart tells me. I'm a musician, and off I go. None of that happened. My father was accused by, then Noriega was a lieutenant colonel at the time. He was not the dictator. He was a colonel. He was in charge of G2 in those days, military intelligence, which is an oxymoron, by the way. But I believe it is. And he was accused of being involved in a plot to kill him and Torrijos and whatnot. So my father, who worked at the time, my father worked in the Department of National Investigation, which is another interesting anecdote very quickly. My father worked in the Policía Secreta Nacional. That's where my dad began work, in the National Secret Police in Panama. Now, when you hear that, you think, oh my God, this repressor, you can see him taking nails out and teeth and throwing people out of planes on the ocean. How did that happen? My father was a basketball player, amongst other things. And in those days, the colonel in charge of the comandancia, we had Policía Nacional, was José Antonio Ramón Cantera. He was the colonel, in charge, the comandante. He came up with the idea that the Policía Nacional, the national police, needed something that made it closer to the community. And his idea was, let's create a basketball team. Policía Nacional, right? My father was a very good player. So he knew my father was a very good player, so he went and got my father. Two police got my father and brought him over to him. And he offered my dad the job. I'm going to make you a captain. I'm going to pay you $75 a month, I think it was, which was a lot of money then. And I want you to organize a team. And my father said, no, thank you. And Ramon arrested him. So, a couple of days later, he brought him back and said, because he had my father, why don't you, a great ungrateful man, I'm offering you with a uniform. My father said, I don't want to wear a uniform. So that was the issue. And then Ramon came up with the notion there was a Policía Secreta Nacional aspect that had not been developed. And Ramon said, so the problem is you don't want to wear a uniform. Okay, so we're going to put you in the secret police. The secret police wears no uniform. So you have a problem with that? My father said, no. The 8 guys who were in the team, because the Policía Secreta Nacional was a basketball team. Now think of that for a second. It's like the CIA and the NBA. Hey, you want to know who the CIA guys are? You go to the NBA, there they are working, dunking balls and whatnot. So I couldn't, and this is like Panama. It's like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, my dear friend Gabo, and I, we laughed so much when we heard the story. I told him the story. We used to swap crazy stuff that we do. And the French had to invent, surrealism. We lived it every day. It's like, So my father, and I said, but they, you paid a dime and you knew who the Policía Secreta Nacional was because they were all there, 8 guys. So anyway, my father stayed, and then the funny part was that they all stayed there. They were all neighbor guys. They were like from the Santana, a neighborhood, a popular neighborhood. So my dad and all those guys, they stayed till the end as detectives, working. So in 1962, I think it changed names and it became the Departamento Nacional de Investigaciones. And my father was one of the first people that, in those days, they didn't have the DEA, they had the Bureau of Narcotics. And because of racism, the FBI and the Bureau of Narcotics didn't have agents, black agents and Latino agents. And they were noticing the rise of drug dealing, and they had no one to work as an undercover because all the guys were like 6 feet too white as white can be, and it's like you can't put this guy in a Peruvian or Mexican cartel because they're gonna kill him in 2 seconds. The moment they see him come and go, ahí viene uno, pa, So they went to my father, spoke English. So my father started working with him. So when Noriega started getting very close to the cartels, the DEA and the CIA entered in a conflict because Noriega was working with the CIA. So my father ended up being accused of being involved in a thing. And they dismantled the DEA in Panama in those days because of that. So my father ended up leaving in 1973. My mother took him out. In the family. They all went to Florida. I stayed in Panama because I was presenting my thesis. And in 1974, I presented my thesis and I left. And I went to Florida. But if that had not happened, I would have stayed in Panama. I would have been a lawyer and I wouldn't be a musician or an actor or anything. I would have stayed in Panama. Would have married there, had children, and that would have been my life. But it changed. I mean, sorpresa te da la vida. That was another surprise. So, as far as the acting thing, I never thought I wanted to be an actor. I wasn't thinking about being an actor. It was an accident. Went in, I was curious, and then I was offered a movie, and I did it, and I thought I was terrible, and then I said, I'm never going to do this again. And then another friend grabbed me and said, no, you have to do this, and I did it, and then they got a better review, and then another guy who was very important came over and said, I think you have talent, kid. You have to come this way. And then I went over to see what it was, and then done like 40 movies now. But I mean, it wasn't like I planned it. That was another surprise. The Harvard thing, I mean, I came to speak to an Inter-American Latin group. And then they started needling me like, would you consider coming to Harvard? And I said, no. And they said, why not? And I said, because I don't think my credits are good enough to be admitted here. And then Frederick Snyder, my dear Dean Snyder from the Harvard Graduate Law School. I love that man. It was the Dean Snyder. He told me, he said, we are not just interested in averages. We're interested in people and what they want to do and what their goals are. And the essay is very important. And he kind of convinced me. And I wrote and I applied, and then much to my surprise, months later, I got the letter, you know what I mean, which I didn't want to open. At one point, I thought I'd throw it away. I don't want to know. And then I did open it, and then I said, okay. Then I called my mom. I never went to my graduation in Panama, and she never saw me graduate. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to try this. And I came. And I was very arrogant when I showed up. I thought it was a piece of cake. 3 weeks later, I was crying in my room, banging my head on the door against the wall, saying, "Stupid idiot! Why did you come?" I had a band who wanted to kill me because I left the band to come here, and they were not happy. So anyway, but it was a great experience. I'm very happy I did it. I'm very glad I did. But that was a surprise as well. Everything has been pretty much a surprise, a pleasant surprise, I have to say. Because I know there are people that are better than me in what I do, better than me. You don't have to agree, but they are. They are better than me. And they never get the break. So I got the break. And it's something that one has to always be grateful for. And understand also that success is never one person. I'm not here because I'm successful by myself. I've had a lot of people who helped me get here. The band, my teachers, so many people. So it's not like I'm the big thing. It's like, no, I was lucky that I had a lot of people, like I said, even more talented than me and better prepared that helped me get here. But it's all been a pleasant surprise. And let's see, what other surprises are in store. I'm sure there are more. Hopefully, My dad is 98, by the way. Yeah, I asked him, how are you doing? I'm bored. So I can understand that. Who else? Okay.
Pleasure. I can't believe we're all so tight in our seats. I'm about to explode.
No, don't explode.
To have you.
Whatever you do not explode.
To have you so close. When I listen to your voice,
She's
it's like...
closer.
When I listen to your voice, it's like a voice I know. Because you've been the soundtrack to my life in many ways. You taught me to listen to lyrics. Not only to dance to them, but to listen to them. You and Shakira. I'm Colombian. I'm also from Cali, so I'm a salsera.
Cali.
Salsera de alma, corazón y cuerpo. So I have two questions. One is, I'm also a feminist, a very fierce feminist, and a reggaetonera. And my question is about reggaeton.
The what?
Reggaeton.
Uh-huh.
I know you're a very close friend with Residente. René. And I know you've sang some reggaeton
La Perla.
songs. La Perla, which is, I know it by heart. I feel that both salsa and reggaeton, you can correct me with this, obviously, come from a very similar place, from the streets. And they are the voice of those that haven't had the possibility to speak out, and they found music to speak out. And they are political in that way. But some people say that reggaeton, and I agree in some parts, is very machista and perpetuates some kind of violence. But I believe that reggaeton is very political as well.
It could be, yes.
And I would like to know what's your perspective and your opinion on reggaeton. And I have another question that maybe this is not the place or the moment to ask, but if we could, can I please have a dance with you?
A what?
A dance with you.
A what? A dance?
Yes.
I don't know about the dance. I'm a terrible dancer.
I've seen you dance.
I'd run away from here. The reggaeton, but nothing would be more pleasurable. You're very attractive and lovely lady. But I'm not a great dancer. I'm too embarrassed. And then wait. But let me respond. The thing that I try not to do also is like each generation is going to express it in itself according to their ways. I asked René once, I said, René, why didn't you get involved in salsa as opposed to reggaeton? And René, with the sincerity that he has, he told me, Rubén, yo no sé cantar. And that was the most honest thing. I said, why are you in reggaeton and not in salsa? He said, I can't sing. I cannot sing. So, because reggaeton, you're pretty much reciting, no? Reggaeton is what happens when you don't have a band, basically. You're like, está recitando. Yeah. It's like plástico. You know how plástico would sound without a band? And this I picked up the guys when we're in the bus. You don't know what love and hate is until you ride with a band and a bus on a tour. The best and the worst of people come out of the bus with a long trip, you know. So we do all kinds of things to entertain ourselves. And one of the things that Chichicín Castillo, the trumpet player, was one day we're in the bus and he starts, ella era una chica plástica. De esas que veo por ahí. De esas que cuando se agitan sudan. Chanel number 3. So he started like reciting the whole thing, right? And I started to laugh because I said, well, that's what I would sound like. Well, not like, he did it like in Spanish because it's like when you see PBS, Masterpiece Theater, there's something about English people when they speak. It sounds so much better. So you know, more refined. Entonces, and the same goes with Spanish. Si un cubano, ella era una chica plástica, esa que veo por ahí, no, ella era una chica plástica. When you put the Spanish accent, it all of a sudden sounds like, that's very interesting. So René was very, very honest. He said, I don't know how to sing. So, but I do agree with you that, and I am, again, I don't listen to things that I don't like. I do believe that songs that glorify or perpetuate belittling people are, again, freedom of speech. I don't listen to that. You feel that that's your right to do that, but and that's your opinion. And I have another problem with opinions, you know, which again would put me into like, oh, you're against free speech. Everybody has the right to an opinion, but I have the right to think that your opinion stinks. And I don't have to accept your opinion. If you have an opinion that, for instance, all people who don't look like yourself should be killed, I don't have to agree with that, and I don't have to accept that opinion. And again, I have the right to express that. Well, you're sick if you think that's gonna help anybody. And again, you have the right to say that. And again, I ask, where does it stop? I mean, is there a place where you can say you shouldn't think that all women are to be treated like dogs because that's your opinion? I mean, and that I should respect that opinion. I don't have to respect that opinion. You have the right to say it, but I don't have to respect that. So when it comes to reggaeton, whatever I don't like, I don't listen to. I don't listen to, and if somebody asks me, what do you think? I said, I think it's horrible. You know? Now, at the same time, it can also be, and René has done really good work. Latino America is a great song, for instance. You know, he's got, and the video he did a documentary where he took his DNA and he followed it. He ended up in Africa, he ended up in China, he ended up in all these places and collaborating with musicians and groups on those places. I thought that was extraordinary. And you know that René is a graphic designer, graduated. He went to Memphis. He's a graphic designer. He doesn't talk about it, but you know he went through the discipline. So, and I have to say also that people like Bad Bunny, for instance, the last time I played in Puerto Rico 2 years ago, somebody came. I usually leave as soon as I'm done, but I didn't have to leave the next day, so I stayed. And somebody said, Bad Bunny is outside. And I said, oh, he came to the show. Wow, he stayed the 3.5 hours. He's there with his mom and dad. I said, oh, send him in. And it was his father's birthday. And the father wanted to see me, and he came with his father and his mother. And I asked it, when he's with his mother, I said, how does he behave? How is he? And she said, you know, and he's very correct, very nice son, you know, so, everybody has an image of, these guys like, they're this and they're that. I mean, what I saw there was somebody who really respected his family, a family that was like very straight. And so we have to really, again, being objective, try to inform yourself before one jump to conclusions. But there are some people that do have no problem, no scruples about making money, belittling other people. And I don't accept that personally. That's why I don't listen to what they do. Somebody else raised. Okay, and then I'm going to go up. They got a lot of Colombians in.
Your music has served as a clue, our shared verbal Latin American stories. And my question was, what are your thoughts on a Latin American union and we maintain our individual identities while sustaining a regional project?
Well, that would be ideal. And somebody had an idea about that, I think, Simón Bolívar, and that didn't work. And I think it would be very difficult. I mean, look at the United States as an example. One of the problems we have, in spite of the fact that we're the biggest minority in this country, and we contribute to this country's economy and culturally, and I say this all the time, you don't find Latinos in the street begging. People work, they come. And most of us that are here, we came here because of political scenarios or because economic pressures that brought us here. And some of them as a consequence of bad U.S. policies of supporting dictatorships, and we ended up here. No one leaves their country because they want to. Very few people make the plan, I'm going to grow and then I'm going to go. No, you leave because you're forced to go. So the issue of, what was the first part of the question? Because it was... I'm sorry, now I got it. But the thing is, in here, one of the reasons why we don't have more of a political power is that we act like tribes. You have the Puerto Rican tribe, the Mexican tribe, the Cuban tribe, so there's no one speaking Colombian tribe. You don't have like one person articulating a position for all. A Mexican doesn't want a Cuban to be talking for him or her. And then a Puerto Rican doesn't want, a Salvadorian talking for me. No, I'm going to talk for myself, and so on. So we need to create here the type of fabric that, in terms of argument, that would allow us to speak as one. And that has not happened here. So I don't see it happening in Latin America in general at this time, although it would be wonderful. And I'll tell you, so, that happened in Europe. Yeah, well, they have a little bit more time than us in this. Once I remember, Belisario Porras, president of Panama, was asked by a newspaper person, and this is a true fact, Presidente Porras, what does Panama need to be like Switzerland? And Porras looked at him and said, the Swiss. So I remember once in Spain, I was sitting down and some guy started talking about Latin America and discipline. I said, it's interesting. We're sitting right here, and in front of this building is from like 1500. And if we're going to talk about advances, the Egyptians were like not just building pyramids, but tracing the path of the sun, while your people here were eating things that were still moving. Were not even cooked. So let's not go there. As far as Panama, we only have from 1903 to now, it's nothing. We're like little babies still. We should be more advanced. I agree, but it's a process. Everything is a process. So I don't see it happening. It should happen. Would be ideal for us. Imagine the pool of talent and resources that we have natural and human, please, we would be ahead. But it's I don't see it yet. It's not an impossibility, but I don't see it right now. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this echoing my friend here and the president opportunity for me.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I admire you.
Thank you.
I think you've been my home before I was born.
Probably. They probably dance with you, with you inside.
So thank you for that. My question related to the previous one is, it's been almost 42 years since you launched Maestra Vida. And how do you reflect, looking backwards, about Hispania, about Latin America and the issues that you try to reflect?
The whole point, I was having a conversation with Gabo, with Garcia Marquez, your contemporary, my dear Gabo. And it was an interesting conversation because my reaction to Hispania, to the creation of Hispania, was to prevent the military from assigning blame on my descriptions and saying, are you talking about us? I'm saying, I have this mythical country that I have created, and these things happen there. My first song, Juan González, began this way. La historia que van a escuchar está basada en hechos ficticios. Cualquier semejanza con personas vivas o muertas es pura coincidencia. I was going to invoke that in case I got arrested. They were like, didn't you hear the song, the beginning? This is not happening. You guys don't exist, you know. But Gabo told me about Faulkner and Yaunapataufa, the county that all the stories, Faulkner stories, occur there in the town, in this county. And then he had this Macondo. And the Macondo, everybody associates Macondo. I knew Gabriel from before the novel. You know? So I was familiar with the short stories. La hojarasca is there. The Macondo is already there. So he sort of inspired me to consider this creation of this place where all my characters actually live there. I'm making the connections now of what the connections are, because there are connections amongst the characters that many of you, I have not made known yet, but I'm working on that. So to create, I was like painting, but I was painting at different times and different places. I wasn't finishing the whole paint because I didn't know enough at the time. So, but as far as the song Maestra Vida, when I wrote it, I was 30 years old. Now I sing it, I'm 74. The song means something different to me now. Because now remember there were two covers. One is a young profile and the second one is an old profile. I'm in the old profile now. So, I'm in like turning the corner, of the race, the horse race, turning the corner. So when I sing it, it means something totally different to me. But I continue to write and make the connections all based on that mythical place, Hispania. And now they're talking about, I'm working on a play, on a musical, to be able to interpret it around with different groups, theatrical groups in each country. So I'm working on that, and also on a film script. But it's interesting because it's a song that really conjures a lot of my concerns then, which are now, and I can't believe that 42 years have gone by. I can't. But it's true. Yeah. Yeah. Otro colombiano.
Thank you. So yeah, definitely a great opportunity to be here. And, your songs definitely are part of the history of Latin America. You capture the Latin American character and issues in those songs. So I feel that I wanted to ask the question to a person that has been thinking about Latin America and what it means to be Latin America. And that question is, what do you find, what are the things in the Latin American character that give you hope?
My experience is that we are solidary with one another. My experience has been that people help each other. My experience is that people learn how to overcome defeat. I come from a family con la esperanza invencible del que ha sido perdedor. So we don't just fall and roll. We get up. And I've seen this. We give the hand to somebody to come to get them up again. I saw it in my neighborhood growing up. And some can argue that it was a different time, but I don't think so. I think that we still have that. I think that whatever is that we're very, I would say, disappointed, angry at the way that our lives, many of our lives develop. And I'm talking about in Latin America, but in the end, we haven't lost the laughter, we haven't lost the hope. It's still there. We just maybe have to dig a little deeper to find it, because people are so frustrated. But I think that, I want a Latino next to me in a tight spot, because I think that, we can work, we can make it work. I seen my band, the way that they behave, and my family, my family friends. I still have friends that I had when I was 12, 14 years old. That's friends for 55 years, and they're good people. They're very good people, and their sons and daughters are good people as well. So I think that we will pull through. I think that we have all the elements to pull through. So that makes me have faith. In Panama too, regardless of what's happening, I keep my faith. I bet in the heart of the spirit of the people of Panama. I bet on that. Always will. So even as frustrated as one can get. Somebody else. Leave Jose for last because.
Buenas, Don Rubén, and
Buenas.
thank you so much. My name is Raquel Maldonado. I'm in my first year in the Harvard Law School. I believe you actually studied in the law school with my father, attorney Roberto Maldonado.
Yeah, sure, I remember him.
He sends you his deep regards.
Please give him my best.
I will.
Tell him to tell you the day we were frying chuletas.
I will. That is a story I want to hear.
Yeah, the firemen came. Tell him.
So thank you very much for everything today. My question is actually related to what you were just saying. I think all of us in this room have expressed the frustrations that we have with how things are going in our respective countries. We're all very young. We cannot lose hope.
No.
How do you suggest that we not lose that hope? Because sometimes it feels very difficult and like you want to just sell out, but that's not really what I want in my heart of hearts. So what are your biggest suggestions for all of us to maintain that hope and keep fighting for the better future that we all envision?
Find ways that you can help your community. Find ways where you can add to the work that is being done already by other people. We tend to only look at the bad things. In Panama, I remember that in an area called Curundú, there was a school, Fe y Alegría. And they stayed in that school. You know, when the school period ended, the school was open. It kept open because it was the place where most of the people in the neighborhood gravitated towards. Because the teachers were there. The teachers actually showed up, even if they weren't being paid. So, and they were working with their nails, you know, whatever they could. So if you can find ways to contribute to the community, you will continue to be alive. The worst thing that can happen to anyone alive is indifference. That's where death begins. The moment you are indifferent, you're gone. So we can all find ways to, how am I going to try to help here? How can I, for instance, in Panama, I help the Danilo Perez Foundation, for instance. You find for many years, I had certain areas that I would go, I didn't talk about it. I just went and helped in San Miguelito, El Padre Carabañite, el Parroquia Belén, Curundú, you know, so you can help and give your time, assistance to some group that you believe is working, is having success. And that way you will keep yourself active and alive. But I think it's community. The community has to move. The community has to move. You can't just sit and wait. And this is the problem. People have to react. And I guess it'll take some time. I think it'll happen. But I get impatient and frustrated, like anybody. I continue to write, to present my positions, my suggestions, my proposals. I talk to as many people as I can, but I write. I keep on writing, you know, so that I don't become indifferent. Josecito.
Esa voz de locutor de José Mazó.
Rubén, gracias. Mira, Doris, primero antes que nada, de los estudiantes, to the students, all of you who are here, you asked a great question about you giving up. I'm so like close to age to Rubén. I think when I go to sleep at night, I sleep well because the present and future is in good hands because of all of you here. So give yourself a big round of applause, first of all, because you are the future.
And you really are.
They are. What can I say? You know, I came here because the theme, I think, was art, politics, and law. But in many ways, I think it was the power of art, music in particular, politics and social movements. And I want to posit just two things for your consideration as bookends, two bookends. First time I saw Rubén was October 27, 1974, Madison Square Garden, 20,000 people in the audience. He was singing with Rey Barreto. And it was a gathering of a diverse group of people in solidarity with the independence of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about this young man from Panama, didn't even know he was from Panama, but he took the microphone during the 2 or 3 songs that Barreto played, and in solidarity, stated his solidarity and mandat for the independence of Puerto Rico, which caught my attention because who does that? One, started the booking. September 2nd, 2019, when Bad Bunny and his family go backstage and it's Choliseo to talk and meet with Rubén, was the other booking. But what happened in between was that summer 2019, those of you who are from Puerto Rico remember this, the most peaceful revolution in Latin America took place.
Yeah.
The most peaceful revolution in Latin America took place. Que empezó con mujeres dando caldero, muchas de ellas afrodescendentes. Many of those women were Afro-descendants in Puerto Rico, in front of La Fortaleza, hitting pots at night, asking for the resignation of the governor at the time, Ricky Rosselló. But later, millions of people hit the street y los que tuvieron poder de convocatoria eran René Pérez, Ricky Martin, Bad Bunny, y yo me atrevo, Rubén, I posit that if they were here in this room, they would say that the seeds for them to understand the power they had was just so convenient. Wow. I would bet that they would say that. That Bunny would say it. And I have no doubt Ricky Martin would say it. And I get emotional because that type of revolution doesn't take place everywhere. But it was because someone grew up listening to your music, siembra and everything else, Platico, se ve la cara, all Latin America and the Pan-Latinism that you sang of, gave them agency and power to know that they had a role to cause a movement that caused somebody on August 2nd, 2019 to resign from his office. That seed started October 27th, 1974. And the bookend was the meeting with Bad Bunny and Rubén. I've been doing radio for 47 years. When I met Rubén, it was Ray Morena. What's you? I don't know if you remember.
I remember that I forgot the lyrics of The Garden.
Ray Morena introduced me. He said, where are you going after you finish the interviews? It was summer of 75 when I started my radio show. I said, I'm staying here until they kick me out. I said, don't go. I want you to meet my singer. He's new, he's from Panama, and Rubén Blades is going to like him. I said, oh yeah, I saw him sing with you. And Rubén showed up, and the first thing Rubén, you said to me was, ¿de dónde tú eres? I said, Puerto Rico. He said, nunca te olvides tocar la música de Cultivo y su combo, y Madre Rivera, Gran Combo, Show Feliciano, Tito Rodríguez y Gran Combo. Porque esas fueron la gente que abrieron la puerta en Panamá para yo tener el amor que yo tengo por esta música. Así es. That was in July of 1975. This June 22nd, I'll be celebrating my 47th anniversary of doing my radio show. And I think, in many ways, what he said to me at that time was the seed. Yeah. And so I just want to close with that because all of you who are here at this moment, he's humble. He hasn't taken any credit for the movements he's caused amongst you in Puerto Rico, and others around the world, but he has. And it's a movement that is strong and will go on forever because it starts with him taking that opportunity to tell stories about you, about me, about us. That's the power